there are two different forms of control in the media. Okay, you either have the neoliberal form of control, which at least creates the pretense of freedom, that you have a choice, but it fits a tidy, neat little neoliberal ideological box that is way more open-minded to, of course, far-right advocacy, because far-right advocacy does not challenge the interests of capital. As a matter of fact, fascism can protect the interests of capital in times when there's a lot of leftist mobilizing occurring, a lot of communism happening. Fascism can be seen by those who own capital as a liberating force to ensure that there is still that same order, that same hierarchy. Look no further than what happened in Nazi Germany, if you would want to understand what I mean here, and how many of these corporations ended up siding with the fascist regime because they did not want to be undermined by trade unionists and the communists, which would have perhaps taken away some of their profits. I mean, that's unacceptable. So who's really at fault here? I don't know. Probably the communists, as a matter of fact. So that's a reality. But ultimately, as I was saying, in the Western world where we have neoliberal capitalist freedoms, there is a neat little ideological box. The punishments are not as overt for going outside of that box. You can have, for example, someone like myself preach the ideas that are completely outside of mainstream politics, and I can do it freely as long as I am, making money for my capitalist masters still, and I'm a good little employee. And of course, there's still limitations to what I can and can't say. The very moment that you, of course, organize and it becomes a threat, then it's over. They take your microphone away, 100%. Now, so there's that reality as well. But in a more authoritarian country, dissent of this nature is not allowed. Political dissent like this is significantly limited, more limited than the United States of America. I can't get away with saying half the shit I say about Donald Trump and the American government, even on the internet, as I would in Turkey. Like, I would not be able to get away saying these sorts of things about Erdogan or uncovering certain things that Erdogan has done in Turkey, for example. It just would not happen. In America, you can do that. So that is a true freedom. That is a real freedom that America offers that does not exist. But as far as like the freedom to dissent or to protest, no, you don't get that in the United States of America either. There are still significant state consequences when you speak out against the state, whether it be the monopoly of violence that the state has. If you criticize that, or the way that the state uses violence, you criticize that, you're going to be on the receiving end of some violence there. It's going to happen. You might even get arrested. Maybe not directly because you're protesting, but you'll get arrested for one reason or the other. Okay? You'll at the very least have your opportunities limited to you, significantly limited. In authoritarian states, on the other hand, you don't get to say these sorts of things out loud. But the difference then, or at least according to both Slavoj Žižek and Noam Chomsky, two men that never agree on anything with the exception of this, the enforcement of speech in authoritarian countries leads to people recognizing that they are being undermined, that their liberties are being undermined. It creates a more viable opposition as a consequence of that, because at least you know that you're being fed poison by the government in that circumstance. Whereas we here in the Western world believe that we have these incredible freedoms, and there's a true choice, especially in your media consumption, that like all of our media is not completely and neatly organized by those who own capital. So that's the difference there. And of course, I prefer to be here than somewhere like that. So, I do appreciate the free pornography. It's a big deal for me. But make no mistake, to assume that there is no control of information, or to assume that there is freedom of speech in one country over the other, well, that's not true. both cultures, both attitudes, both organizations, both systems have different forms of control. We literally do have freedom of thought, man. Look at the hogs who can literally ignore wearing a mask, killing others because of it. Literally no repercussions with that shit. My friend, you are misunderstanding my point. I said far-right thoughts, or even fascism in certain circumstances, can be preferable to capital owners because it does not undermine the status quo. It does not undermine the pre-existing organization, the pre-existing hierarchy that we exist under. A big function of the media, whether you like to admit it or not, is to justify the cruelty that we experience under a capitalist organization of the economy. That does not disprove my point. I already addressed exactly what you said.